Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you in our second session. And I am Nijolė Bliūdžiuvienė, Associated Professor of Vilnius University at the Faculty of Communication, and will moderate this session. So I'll be with you for these few hours today. And some technical remarks before giving the floor to our speakers. 25 minutes are allocated for presentations, and our speakers have 20 minutes for the main presentation and 5 for the discussion. And the discussion will follow the presentation if this varies the time, but it also the possibility to discuss at the end of the session. It depends on us. And please raise a hand for raise a hand for giving a question. And also you have possibility to write your questions in chat box. So please give questions in 2 ways. And enjoy our session, and we'll invite our first speaker. This is Professor Arvydas Pacevičius. Please share the slides. And Arvydas Pacevičius, his research interests include the history of communication and information, the development of memory institutions, the expression of documentary heritage, and ego documents. He is head of research project Bibliographical Lithuanian ego documentary heritage Homo Viator. He is compiler and author of 20 books, and he has published more than 170 articles in Lithuanian and foreign scientific publications. So the floor is yours. You're welcome.
Hello, dear travelers to the international conference, the Periodicals and Changing Society, virtual travelers, and also all audiences. My presentation, Dissemination of Scientific Periodicals in Lithuania in the first half of the 19th century, the case of Vilnius University. In this presentation, I want to discuss the dissemination of scientific periodicals in Lithuania and Vilnius University in the beginning of 19th century. The period is characterized by the continuance of the ideas of the Enlightenment in the long 18th century, which were generated by the re-establishment of the Vilnius Imperial University in 1803. The period is characterized by an rise in science and studies in the former capital of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. On the other hand, after the third partition of Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in 1795, the academic community of Vilnius found itself in the information space of the Russian Empire, which limited scientific communication with the research centers of Western Europe. Understand dissemination as the distribution, acquisition, storage, consumption, reading, dispersal, and communication of heritage. In other words, post-print functioning, circulation of scientific information or scientific communication. The phenomenon in question can be described as the social life of periodicals. Dissemination is an integral part of periodical culture, a continuation of scholarly creation and publishing. Please, first slide. I will not cover all the aspects of dissemination in this report, so I will concentrate on the question of how scientific periodicals from abroad have reached the Lithuanian academic community and what is the heritage of periodical journals. Contextual issues also important. Circulation of periodicals between academies and universities, the information behavior of scholars, the culture of storage of publication, and repressive censorship. Please, second and after third slide. Second, third. Second slide, please. Third, yes, no, second, I mean third slide. Insights into the mobility of scientific ideas and knowledge in space and time relevant to the study of scientific periodicals. Robert Darnton model of the book communication cycle is usefully complemented by the theory of the mobility of scientific ideas. It allows us to reflect not only on the culture of late Enlightenment scientific periodicals, but also to grasp the expression in later centuries, including the 21st century. According to the Polish researcher Iwona Imanska, citation, the most important function of scientific periodical is the cognitive one, which is achieved by conveying a certain amount of scientific knowledge to the recipient. To a lesser extent, it also has methodological, ideological, and even aesthetic functions. The end of citation. It is important to understand the content of the definition of periodicals. A publication with the same title, new content, uniformly designed, numbered and dated, usually of the same format and size, and published regularly. What distinguishes scientific periodicals from the rest of the periodicals, including popular science, is the peer review of the papers and the rapid publications of the research results. What was the situation in the beginning of the 19th century? Next slide, please. Scientific periodicals in the 19th century continued to find the niche share in the emerging modern system of knowledge and bibliographic classification. In Europe, citation, around beginning of the 19th century, the basic structures had essentially attained their final form both in content as universal, multidisciplinary, or specialist journals, and in typology as review organs or periodicals with scholarly, popular, or popular philosophical or belletristic contributions. However, in Lithuania, the understanding came later. In 1820, the subtitle periodical, pismo periodyczne in Polish, appears in Vilnius pharmaceutical journal Pamiętnik farmaceutyczny. It's considered the first scientific periodical devoted to the pharmaceutics in Polish and Lithuania. The term periodical appears at similar time in the official documentation of the Vilnius University. In the beginning of 1822, the librarian Victor Alexander Bovakiewicz noted in the gift book, citation, "I have accepted the national and foreign periodicals listed for 1820 and 1821 into the university library." So it's first use of term of periodical in official documentation. However, the term periodicals does not appear until 1831, marking the final distinction of the type of publication in the library classification. This distinction is linked both to the practical work of creating a systematic catalog of Vilnius University Library and to advance in the science of bibliography. Joachim Lellevel, for example, distinguishes in the binary bibliographical bookstore, Bibliograficznych ksiąg dwoje, between continuing scientific works, acta uczone, memory, and journalistic works, journalistica. In his general bibliography, Boharkiewicz already defined periodicals as the best means of finding out about the merit of books and scientific works. Thus, the concept emphasizes the information and promotion of scientific work rather than the publication of new knowledge in the form of article. In fact, even the rather scholarly publication Vilnius mentioned above work Journal of Pharmaceutics in Vilnius, its publishers emphasize the function of introducing and popularization. Periodicals either mediate between scientists by communicating new insights, observations, and inventions, or merely publish the usual and generally accepted news, or finally combine both purposes. In our choice of material, we will stick more to the second objective, the end of quotation. Thus, the aim of publishing scientific news rather than presenting research results baked in. By the way, the journal was aimed at aspiring young pharmacists, so this strategy of scientific communication is understandable. Please, next slide. Despite the prevailing popular conception of the science, the periodical collection in Vilnius University Library grew steadily, and in 1831, there were, as you see in the slide, 1,428 volumes of periodicals. In slide you see what parts, what classes of science they represent. In the first place, as you see, we have mathematics. I think that it is connected with famous Professor Michał Pelka-Poliński, who was very active, yes, in supporting library and in making acquisitions more modern and so on. And other classes, other parts of science, history, nature, and so on. So, unfortunately, there are no surviving links of publications, periodicals, yes, in the newly formed periodical collection. So the composition of the collection can only be described retrospectively. In planning the purchases, Kazimierz Kontrimas, in 1818 drew up a list of works published by scientists, societies, and academics in the library. In list 27 periodicals and continuing works, of which 8 were published in St. Petersburg and Moscow, most of them multi-volume. Among them, we see new research papers of the Berlin Academy, memoirs of the Turin, yes, Italy Academy, Acta Academia Moguntinė, it's Mainz, Acta Novae Societis Jenensis, yes, Vienna, Germany, and so on. what it's very important that in this list of countries we see also famous, very important periodical for scientists in the 18th and 19th century, Transactions of the American Philosophical Society. Yes, it was printed in Philadelphia. Please, next slide. Yes, Transactions. What it is important that, as you see, yes, in the title list, yes, we have inscription, yes, donation inscription to the University of Vilna from the American Philosophical Society. The inscription recalls the time when Julian Ursinimtsevich, a comrade of Kosciuszko and a fellow countryman born near Brest, Lithuania, historical Lithuania, became a member of the American Philosophical Society from 1798 and was elected an honorary fellow of the Vilnius University in the beginning of 19th century. It is probably thanks to him that the library of Vilnius University received 6 volumes of the scientific periodical, yes, Transactions, in 1807. So this was a substantial gift that became a signpost of scientific information for the academic community in Vilnius. Next slide, please. So it is list of country list of periodicals shows, yes, as you see in slide, that the publications were outdated, most of them having been published in 18th or early 19th century. Professor Andrzej Sniadecki in 1818 gave the following opinion to the management to authorities of Vilnius University. First of all, the library does not have continuation of the most famous scientific journals of societies in Europe. So it needs to acquire the philosophical transactions published in London, not in America. Please, next slide. We have also a collection of Vilnius University Library philosophical transactions from England, yes, as you see. Secondly, Sniadecki noted that instead of the original languages of the scientific works, the library has a preponderance of translations of scientific writings in Polish and other languages. It is not so good, yes, according to Sniadecki. And thirdly, the continuing and periodical scientific works in Polish dzienniki, pamiętniki are incomplete and mostly defective. Finally, a recommendation is made to remediate the library this situation, yes, and he also sent for authorities a list of publications to be acquired. Yes, he presented this. Next slide. So periodicals gaps in the library were filled by expanding contacts with booksellers, competitive pricing, and the use of traveling academics. From 1820 onwards, the service were not only provided by local booksellers such as Zawadzki, Moritz, Glücksberg. The university was supplied with periodicals at competitive prices by Sommerbrot in Berlin, Cicėnienė, Gerhard, Breitkopf, Vos, Wolf, Hartmann, and Havelke and Riga. And so it is important that in 1830, an attempt was made to establish a network of periodicals through the bookseller Gref in St. Petersburg, but later officials of Vilnius University wrote that transport of foreign periodicals had been refused because Gref cannot deliver them except by ship once time a year, which would be very inconvenient for the university, although a fairly moderate price has been offered. So it is important, yes, to stress that in this case we see a very important thing, yes, opinion, yes, on the opinion of Vilnius University officials, operative, yes, or quick, yes, equipment, quick transfer, yes, of periodical. It is very important, yes, and if we talk about St. Petersburg, yes, to transport, yes, periodicals, it is not so easy, and the best route was chosen in 1831, a comparative table of delivery prices for 52 scientific journals was drawn up by Bontrager, a bookseller from Königsberg. So his services were, but how to say, his services were no longer valuable because Vilnius University was closed in 1832. But it is also important that there was, how to say, different, yes, different centers, different places, yes, for transport, yes, periodicals in the end of first quarter, yes, of 19th century. Next slide. In addition to the methods of collecting discussed above, subscription was also important. Yes, subscription as one of means of acquisition of periodicals. For example, 40 titles of physics and medical journals were received from England and France in 1822. Yes, by subscription. Although the university has the privilege of transporting books duty-free, they were subject to check for reconciliation with a list of banned publications on the arrival at their destination. So in this slide, you see one of banned periodicals. Yes, it is a monthly review from London, published in 1890, but there are other years examples. For example, in 1820, Piotr Shlikov, chief of Vilnius police, ordered the withdrawal from the libraries of Isis von Auken, encyclopedic journal from Weimar. Also, in July 1826, the Edinburgh Review or Critical Journal, a liberal political and economic journal published since 1802, was placed in the category of banned publication. In general, the Vilnius University has paid particular attention to the collection of scientific periodicals, considering them to be one of the most important means of disseminating scientific knowledge and a channel of communication. The censorship system encouraged alternative ways of disseminating books and literature, and the list of banned books became a valuable guide to work with fashionable and foreign countries. Lists of banned books, yes, were published in Russian Empire from the middle of 19th century. in times we are talking about, yes, in the beginning of 18th century, lists of banned books were sent, yes, to authorities. It was not published, printed, but handwritten. But it was also necessary, yes, to look and to make, as I said, yes, to look to the publication, and some publications were banned and taken out, yes, from circulation, from libraries, from bookstores, and so on. So in the end, I want to present, next slide, some examples of periodical heritage. I want to thank the head of the Department of Vilnius University Library, Virginija Galvanauskaitė, who found some very important, yes, examples, but also there were examples which were found when I prepared the book about Vilnius University in the beginning of 19th century. So in this slide we see publications, memoirs, or proceedings, yes, of the Academy of Science in St. Petersburg, yes, from 1830 and 1831. Proceedings or scientific works from St. Petersburg, yes, were transferred to the Vilnius every year, and there are some examples, yes, until now, yes, and they were returned, I think, also to the Vilnius after the Second World War. Next slide. In this slide, we see some scientific periodicals from Poland, yes, from Warsaw and Krakow. They were acquired, as the documentation shows, by donations. Next slide. Yes, I am in the end of my presentation. In this slide, we see some periodicals, older periodicals. In this slide, we see Il Giornale delle Letterate from Italy. It is 17th century, very important, yes, examples, and I think that it is necessary, yes, to pay more attention to periodicals from 17th century. Next slide. Also Acta Eruditorum. It is the first scientific journal from Germany. We see examples from the end of 18th century. And also in holds in stocks of University Library, we have other examples, but not in this case, maybe another time. For example, Journal des Savants, Journal of Scientists from France. It was also it was printed, yes, in similar time like Philosophical Transactions, yes. So also one of the first journals, scientific journals in Europe. I want to thank for you for your attention, and I think that it is possible yet to think about more wide and deep research of scientific journals. We have very important, yes, examples, and also I think that it is possible to try digitalize, yes, publications, and maybe to develop some projects, connected with scientific periodicals in Vilnius and all over Lithuania. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Professor, for your immersion in a historical context. But his continuation in the present, and if the dear audience have a question to Professor, please use the chat box. And now we will continue with our second presentation. And Eglė, I see you. And please share your slides, and I do a short presentation. Eglė Akstinaitė-Veličkienė is the Chief Bibliographer of the Information Resources Management Division of Vilnius University Library. She is responsible for searching and registering publications on the history of Vilnius University and compiling personal bibliographic indexes. So the floor is yours, Eglė, please.
Ačiū, Nijolė. Thank you, Nijolė. Can you hear me?
Yes, okay.
Okay. Labas rytas. Good morning for everyone. My presentation is Ex amore erga Vilnam, iš meilės Vilniui, Kazlauskaitės Bibliographical Indexes on Vilnius Periodicals. Periodicals are one of outstanding sources for the research of multicultural Vilnius history, reflecting everyday life of the city. Vilnius periodicals were published in various languages, but most of them were short-lived due to political circumstances. A comprehensive historical study of Vilnius periodical press has not yet been written. On the other hand, in the absence of a comprehensive register of periodicals, it is not possible to conduct research. During the Soviet times, Jadvyga Kazlauskaitė, a bibliographer at the Vilnius University Library, began to compile bibliographical indexes of periodical in Vilnius, and this report is dedicated to her work. In the first slide, you can see the first periodical published in Vilnius in Polish language. Two bibliographical indexes on Vilnius periodicals of 1760 to 1940 period was compiled in 1916 and 1917. Unfortunately, the author Jadvyga Kazlauskaitė died in 1987 without seeing the result of her work. Indexes was published only in 1988. This presentation introduces the short biography of Jadvyga Kazlauskaitė and her activities in Vilnius University Library, the circumstances of the preparation and publication of the bibliographical indexes of the periodicals of Vilnius, and the unpublished bibliographical list of Vilnius periodicals in Polish, Yiddish, Hebrew, Russian, and Belarusian languages. Short biography of Jadvyga Kazlauskaitė. Jadvyga Kazlauskaitė, or Kozlowska in Polish, also Ožėnaitė, translating Lithuanian from Slavic word koza, in English goat, or Kiska, it is her nickname used by friends and family. Kazlauskaitė was born in the Tsarist Empire, educated and worked in Poland, changed her professional activities in Soviet times. Jadvyga Kazlauskaitė, the daughter of baker, physical education teacher, who later has used her knowledge of languages for her bibliographical activities. Kazlauskaitė spent almost all the years of her life in Vilnius. Kazlauskaitė spoke Lithuanian, Polish, German, and Russian. Polish was her native language. Later, she learned Lithuanian and graduated at Lithuanian Vytautas Magnus Gymnasium in Vilnius. From 1932 to 1936, she studied at the university in Krakow. Kazlauskaitė worked as a physical education teacher in Vilnius and Vilnius region until 1942. In the photo of Kazlauskaitė family, Jadwiga is the eldest daughter. After 1982, she worked at Library of Academy of Science, later at Vilnius University Library book repositories and the Bibliographical department. She compiled several bibliographic indexes. After retiring, managed the documents of 18th century in the manuscript department. Kazlauskaitė was also interested in the history of Vilnius University, collected material about Lithuanian activities in interval Vilnius, wrote her memoirs. Today, Kazlauskaitė is mostly remembered for this activity. And now about bibliographical indexes. When we use the Kazlauskaitė publication, we are not aware of the fact that they were prepared much earlier. In 1916, Kazlauskaitė prepared the typescript of the bibliographical indexes Vilnius Periodical publication 1760 to 1918, and in 1917 another indexes, Vilnius Lithuanian Periodicals from 1904 to 1914. The first bibliographical index list publication from the first Vilnius Periodical to the restoration of an independent state of Lithuania in 1918. The second from the restoration of printing in Latin characters to the Soviet occupation in 1940. In the first typescript, periodicals published in various languages are registered. In the second, only Lithuanian. Kazlauskaitė did not explain such a decision in her typewriting introduction. And now you see title pages of the typescript and published bibliographical indexes. The indexes are compiled based on the catalogs of various Lithuanian libraries, press report, and bibliographical sources. Kazlauskaitė did not write any historical review, did not provide a definition of a periodical. For example, the Polish research regretted that calendars was not included in the indexes. The publication was prepared for the press by Vilnius University bibliographer Izabelė Černiauskienė. Typescript supplement and edited. It was necessary to do this because the typescript was published 28 years later. Comparing a typescript with a publication, the preface, table of contents, and bibliography are different. Second bibliographical index. You also can see title pages. This publication was prepared for the press by another bibliographer, Mirga Griškevičienė. Comparing a typescript with a publication, the preface and table of content also are different. Interesting that Kazlauskaitė divided Lithuanian periodicals into several groups, but after editing, they were combined into one list. The preface of both publications do not describe the circumstances of the preparation of bibliographical indexes, nor do they state the reason why Kazlauskaitė's typescripts were not published. Bibliographical indexes of Kazlauskaitė were included among the works to be printed in the library activity plans. However, these plans were not implemented. Her colleagues in their memoirs state that the bibliographies were not printed due to lack of funds or paper and other priorities. It is known that Kazlauskaitė's typescripts were used by research from Lithuania, Poland, and Belarus. And now about unpublished manuscript. In the manuscript department of the Vilnius University Library, another typescript of Kazlauskaitė is preserved. The list dedicated to Vilnius periodicals in Polish, Russian, Belarusian, and Jewish languages in 98 to 1914. This writing could have been part of a second bibliography, but it remained unfinished. The separation of Lithuanian and other languages can be explained as a decision of national ideology in the Soviet times. So this index is not complete. The manuscript contains only the titles of the publication and the years of publication. There is no information about editors or periodicity. Kazlauskaitė probably did not have the time or motivation to finish it. After all, her works were out of print. And in the slide, you can see one page from his typescript. It is Vilnius periodicals in Polish language. And you see only titles and remarks of Kazlauskaitė. And also you can language and number of publication in this indexes. Polish isolated publication, in Lithuanian vienkartiniai leidiniai, Russia isolated publication, Belarus isolated publication, Jewish, and Karaim. And after more than 50 years, do the works of Kazlauskaitė have value? To the best of our knowledge, her work has been used to prepare national retrospective bibliography in Poland and Lithuania. Unpublished manuscript in search of periodicals published in Vilnius for the exhibition Vilna, One City, Many Stories in Krakow and Vilnius. The search for Vilnius periodicals on the basis of the list prepared by Kazlauskaitė inspired the preparation of his report. So Kazlauskaitė's manuscripts could be a good starting point for the further research into the history of Vilnius periodicals. And thank you for your attention, and thank for my colleague for their support and help.
Thank you, Eglė, for saving time for discussion. So, have you any questions to our speaker, Eglė? Maybe you have a question for our speaker, previous speaker, Arvydas? Oh, yeah. So we'll continue our session, and thank you, Eglė, again. Thank you for taking a look to the bibliographical indexes on Vilnius periodicals. And now I see Liisa. Hello. So we continue with our session, the last presentation before the coffee break. This presentation is from Finland, and our speakers, Liisa Näpärä, works as an information specialist at the National Library of Finland. She coordinates research collaboration. She has a PhD in cultural studies. The paper is a collaborative effort with information system specialist Erno Liukkonen, who has developed the tool. So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is Liisa Näpärä, and I will start this presentation, and then Erno will continue with the actual tool. First, I start with a few words about resource needs and how to access Finnish National Library periodicals, and then Erno will tell you about development of download tool and what kind of lessons we have learned while developing this. And we have tried to understand how researchers are using our digitized newspapers and those different kind of other digitized or digital materials, and we have found out that they have many kinds of needs. Some of those researchers are using digital materials as a sources. They don't have necessarily any kind of digital methods interest or any skills for doing. They are using like those materials, most likely close reading and reading and browsing, and then some researchers are more relying on digital methods as they are doing some categorization in form of Excels or other things that they can use those as a support of the analysis. And then we have those researchers who are mostly doing new methodologies to do the analysis, and of course different kind of researchers can regard different types of use of materials and methods, and so they are not always the same even in the same research, and of course research skills are varying and what they can do as a digital methods or analysis, and so these are really variable types of those research types are varying a lot of. And next slide, please. So in consideration of those kind of many types of researchers and other users, of course, we are providing our this as content for other users. There's a different types, different ways to access those periodicals and digitized content. First is everyone can go to our webpage, diginationallibrary.fi, and find the materials that we have digitized. There are copyrights that can limit some access, but we have made licenses for example, for research purposes, and those materials that you are not allowed to see, you may allow to see if you are affiliated with certain universities in Finland. And this content, and they are in a sense organized by metadata, their search filters, but in a way they can be interpreted as a data mass, unorganized. When a researcher is going there, they have to do something to organize that material to start use it. For example, like browsing or selecting or using those filters that are available there. But this is really easy to start with, but you don't need that much of a skills. If you can use internet, you most likely can use this web page. And this is really widely used. There's regular training and we have in this system, we have 27 million pages, and last year over 18 million pages were used. So almost not every page, but almost every page is used. And currently we are thinking about new material types, how to digitize those and get into the same system. And the next way to access newspapers or periodicals is use data sets. We have a limited number of sets available on our webpage, and these are pre-organized by items or years, and this in a sense there's organizational curation. And when to use those, you have to unzip the files and clean the data and do something to do your analysis, but they're kind of easy to start with, but you need some skills. Notes about uses: they are kind of marginally used. There are sometimes we get feedback that they are too general, static, too big, or they need a lot of work before you can start it. And currently we are discussing a lot about what kind of metadata those data sets need, what kind of updates and versionings they would require to maybe use to serve better resources. And then next, yes, thank you. Then we have APIs, and these apply for out of copyright material, and this can be, the data masses can be organized by different kind of queries, and after you download the data via API, you have to do cleaning, and using these require a lot of technical skills and understanding what APIs are. And so what we know, these are not that largely used, and because they need a lot of skills, but of course we are trying to think about what kind of APIs we need to develop and get in our systems to serve resources better who can use APIs and develop our internal systems. But if we continue with the next thing, we have we have Erno has developed this digi download tool that is currently out of copyright material, but in this tool it is, you will get to see demo later, but you can when you do some research or search queries, you can and you have the same functionalities as you have with the digi.library.fi. You can organize that material with those. You don't have to form very complicated queries to get data from it. You can do almost everything with that. You can read, browse, select, clean, analyze with the tool, and this is really easy to start with. You don't need any advanced skills, but if you have advanced skills to do digital method analysis, it benefits from it, but you can start with almost with no skills. If you can use the internet, you can most likely use this tool. But this is a new tool. We know something that some users have found this, but of course there's still a lot of development to do, and we are currently discussing what to develop next. And in the next one, you can see about the use data from the last year, that those small bars are from the data sets, and that big bar on the bottom, it is about how much this new download tool has been used. This is kind of like new users, so you can see already here that this download tool have found a lot of users, and people have used a lot of it, and next Erno will tell you about what is this new download tool and what can you do with it. So the floor is yours, Erno.
Hi. And now some more information about development of this DigiDownload tool, and by using it, it is possible to download data meshes from Digi, and download is currently limited to copyright-free data. And by using the tool, user can create custom datasets from downloaded data. Tool is easy to use, and programming experience is not needed because of tool's graphical user interface. And also Python installation is not needed because everything needed to run the tool comes with the tool. And web browser has been integrated into the tool, and that's why it is possible to use Digi in this tool and search for material that is going to be downloaded. And after downloading the data can be viewed and processed in the viewing tools. And there are separate viewing tools for collections and clippings. The clippings viewing tool works in a separate browser, and from there it is possible to get subject suggestions for the text of the clippings using the Windows API service, and also browse the subjects in the viewing tool. And next I'm going to show how the tool is going to work. And here you can see the tools user interface, and there is collections and clippings tabs, and you can select do you download collections or clippings. And let's now concentrate to this clippings download. And first you make a search in this digi interface to limit the clippings you are going to download, and you can use words, for example, to limit the download, and you can also add time range to limit it more. And after that you can make the search, and you have now the clippings that you are going to download here. And after that you can select do you download the text of the clippings and pictures of the clippings. And you can also select material storage location and directory tree structure. And download starts from the download material button. And after the download has been completed, you can press this view the downloaded data button. And the viewing tool opens up, and clippings text and metadata is shown. And by pressing this show full text button, you can show full text of these clippings. And you can make searches to each of these columns. And you can change column visibility by pressing this column visibility button and select the columns you want to show in this table. And Windows AI keyword suggestions can be downloaded by pressing this Windows AI keywords button. And keywords are downloaded. And when the download process is completed, you can see the keywords in this Windows AI column, and you can make searches to these keywords. And from each of these keywords, you can open a link to Windows. And there is also links to digi from each of these clippings. And you can also add comments to these clippings and this comments column. And you can also select these clippings and remove unnecessary clippings by pressing this delete the selected rows button. And there is also buttons to open the directories where the text and the pictures of these clippings are downloaded in your own computer by pressing these buttons. And there you can see where they are. And more information about this tool can be found from the tools manuals that come with the tool. And now back to the presentation. And here is shown how the tool's data download process goes. First, user selects collections or clippings download from the tool's user interface. And then user can make a search and limit the data using the digi. And after that, user can select the directory structure and file formats that are going to be downloaded. And it is also possible to select the storage location. And when the download is started, data is downloaded using these digis clippings and collections interface. And after the data has been downloaded, it is possible to proceed to view, modify, and enrich the data using the viewing tools. From the clippings viewing tool, it is possible to start separate Vinto AI tool to get subject suggestions for the text of the clippings using the Vinto AI service. Then there could also be other tools that could be integrated through the interfaces or directly integrating them to the tool. And next, here are some lessons learned and things to consider when developing a similar tool. First thing is if the tool is integrated directly to existing service, or is the tool separate from this service? And things to consider between these two options. You could think things like ease of use of the tool, ease and cost of development, and is user authentication needed, for example, if there are materials that require user authentication, and what interfaces are needed to allow the data to be downloaded. And second thing is code shareability, reusability, and cooperation. Can the tool be released as open source? If the tool is part of existing service, can it be impossible or difficult to release the tool's code separately? Separate tools code can be easier to share. And can other organizations take part to tool development and modify own version of the tool for their needs and possibly share their changes for the tool to others? There could be cooperation possibilities and, for example, courses and practice works in other organizations that could partly do tool development. Then what other existing tools can be integrated to the tool? For example, we have now this Vinto AI, but what other tools there could be and what value do they add? There could be user interviews to get more information and opinions what kind of tools users want. And are these tools used by the APIs, or are they directly integrated to download tool? Then you could think if the web browser is directly integrated to the tool, or if it is separate browser can be used. It is also a good idea to pack the tool to executable files, so it is more easier to use by everyone and Python installation is not needed. Also provide translations for the tool and for the tool manuals. We have translations for 3 languages, Finnish, Swedish, and English. And use long-lasting and maintained Python libraries. And lastly, experiment with the feature development of the tool and get feedback from colleagues and other users. We have got some good and valuable feedback during development of this tool. And the tool can be downloaded from Digi's open data page, and we hope feedback and ideas from all of the users. And next steps for development could be possibilities to download more content and maybe increase interoperability between different in-house systems. And if you have anything to ask or comment, feel free to ask.
now I see you finished your presentation. So thank you for taking us to researchers' dream space, when tools based on new technologies helps to extract data, analyze the content of periodicals. It is very important for not only for researchers, but for general public also. So thank you for your inspired presentation. And now we have some times for our discussion. So please raise your hand and ask our free presentation, Professor Arvydas, Eglė, our colleagues from Finland, ask a question and discuss about this historical and technologies content. Have we any questions from audience? So I see Arvydas on the screen. So I would like to ask you.
I would like maybe not to ask, but maybe to say some words, and
yes,
maybe it is possible, yes, to discuss some things, because very important, yes, to listen colleagues from Finland. And my question, or I don't know, suggestion, maybe also Nijolė will answer something about digitalization of our heritage, because you know that National Library now starts new project. Yes, my how to say suggestion or question about digitalization of our old newspapers. For example, sometimes I can't find digitalized items. For example, today, yes, I presented old periodicals, but it is difficult, yes, to find yes, periodicals digitalized and printed and published in Polish language, for example. Maybe it is a question or problem of strategy. Maybe there are some question discussed with Polish colleagues. Maybe they digitalize something, yes, because 18th century, beginning of 19th century, if we talk about our heritage in Lithuania, periodicals are not digitalized, I think, or not, or maybe there are some, how to say, shifts or changes in the situation. Thank you.
I am not so deep in this digitalization progress. Maybe our colleague Rima Cicėnienė can help us to explain the situation. But the lack of strategic coordination, I think, that is the main problem in this area. So Rima, please.
Hello, dear colleagues. You know, I'm not so deep in the strategy of National Library or culture of ministry about the digitization, but some years ago it was said that the process of digitization is not the aim. Now the best aim is how to reuse these old materials what are digitized. And our colleagues from Finland showed what can be done with all these collections if you have the right tools. So it was very interesting to hear about their experiences. And now I think that all these old materials kept in our storages are the problem of memory institutions who held them. And I think that if our readers will wrote us and asked and said that all this material is very needable for everyone for research. So we're making plans what to scan for every year. So maybe Vilnius University take it to consideration and will make this job, because in Wroblewski library we are going on such a way. But to think about all national strategy is it's not this time. Some countries has another strategy, and bibliographic centers in national libraries, they are coordinating not only collecting bibliographical records, but they coordinate the digitization of them. If they know that someone or institution has some entirety of documents, so they ask them to bibliographize them and to digitize. And all these materials are kept in different locations, but can be reached by one search engine. So there are different strategies, and if researchers or users of all these old periodicals will talk together with member institutions, I think that we can make all these things reachable for researchers. Thank you.
Liisa, you are with us, yes? I would like to ask you, Liisa, how you evaluate, or what is your strategy to find which periodicals is most widely, most used in library, or what is priority to digitize and to put into the systems?
Yes, thank you for the question. I put a link in our digitization program in the chat, and there's different kind of criteria with which materials to digitize. They could go with the user volume or like most requested types of materials. There's and most vulnerable materials, and of course these are different kind of criteria. We are trying to balance those that they could represent a wide variety of materials and languages, and there could be cases when we get co-funding from foundations or research partners to direct which materials we are digitizing. But for example, periodicals, we are trying to be systematical with and we have basically digitized all newspapers before 1939 or 49, depending on which language those are, and they are available from our systems. And then we have systematically digitized the most recent materials. If you talk about periodicals, like from the 2017 onwards, so there's a kind of gap in the middle of those digitized, but some things have been digitized even between those times. For example, we have big Swedish-speaking newspaper project that we are digitizing all the newspapers from the beginning of their publishing times in Swedish, and we are currently doing that. So there could be different kind of criteria and different kind of funding, but we are relying on this digitization program, and currently we are doing the digitization program for the next 4 years, and we are trying to hear our stakeholders also, what are their needs, and for example researchers or funders or people who are needing those materials. So we are trying to be systematical. Of course, that is not always easy. There's a lot of requests if we could digitize this or that, but we are trying to balance different types of criteria, and you can read more about those in our program.
Thank you, Liisa, for the answer and for the sharing link. We can see all our this digital platform. And now, dear audience or speakers, have you any questions for each other? No. So I have a question to Arvydas. In your opinion, has the classification of periodicals improved significantly over the centuries? Periodicals are divided in, have many different classification or so-called. So what do you think? Is the progressed most or still is in the 19th century?
Oh, good question. I asked yesterday Thomas Pedreikis about the situation. I think that he will present something about. According to him, yes, we have nowadays we have big problems, troubles, yes, with classification, but you know, different classification systems we have, and nowadays it is important, I think, and problem is to inventorize what we have nowadays. Yes, what periodicals, scientific periodicals we have, because it is difficult, yes, to how to say, to number how many and so on. But it is also problem of classification. As you saw in 19th century, there was problem, yes, how to distinguish, yes, strict scientific periodicals and popular periodicals. And nowadays we have a similar problem. Secondly, we have problem with how to say, strict sciences, I mean mathematics, physics, chemics, and humanities. Yes, in 19th century the problem was similar. Yes, for example, Sniadecký and other professors, they are not so how to say, many satisfied about popularity of humanitarians, for example, Grodek, because according physicians and mathematicians, humanities, it is not science. Yes, you know. So it is problematic nowadays also because, you know, scholarly and scientific communication, scholarly periodicals, how to define and how to distinguish, yes, to how to say, trends, I think, yes, in research, and also kinds of periodicals. Scientific and scholarly, it is also problematic. We have, yes, different definitions and so on. So, good question. And I think for more deep and good understanding about situation, we need also develop historical research, because there are so many good resources in archive. And our scientists, our bibliographers, our librarians in 19th century, we are very, very, how to say, developed, yes, in bibliography. Yes, Bohatkevich, Leleville, and so on. And there are very interesting insights about citation, yes, in all over science, also in citation of periodicals. So my answer is, and my question also was about digitalization, because when we have a possibility, yes, to find very, very important, yes, sources from, for example, 17th century, Journal of Scavans. It is not Lithuanian, but it is also important, yes, to catch links with Europe, yes, how past periodicals, yes, travel to Lithuania, so it's very important. So I think that we need to develop idea of project, yes, not only in Vilnius University Library, but in all over scientific libraries in Lithuania. Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for all the participants. And now we have coffee break. And at 11, we will continue our session. Please join the same link and have a hot coffee and your sandwich. And at 11, we'll continue our session. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And now we'll continue our session. And I see on the screen Rima Cicėnienė. She is ready to present your presentation. And please share this slide. And Dr. Rima Cicėnienė is a historian, Deputy Director for Research of Wroblewski Library of the Lithuanian Academy of Sciences, and Associate Professor at the Department of Book, Media and Publishing Studies, the Faculty of Communication, Vilnius University. The main research interests are the history of the manuscript book in Grand Duchy of Lithuania, written heritage research, the history of publishing in Lithuania, heritage management and communication. Also, she is author more than 30 research works, having published reports in international and Lithuanian scientific conference, and also she led and participated in more than 10 international, interinstitutional and institutional projects. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nijolė, for presentation. And I would like today was my report to go back to all these collections of periodicals about what Arvydas was talking, that not everything is known today for us. So about non-print periodicals in the Wroblewski Library. What does the collection tell us about the publishing history in Lithuania? In Lithuania, non-print periodicals have been interest of book historians, bibliographers, press historians, and regional librarians for more than 100 years since the end of 19th century. We all know names of Silvestras Baltramaitis, Vaclavas Biržiška, and Aleksandras Ružancovas. Before the ruthless changes in Lithuania in the middle of 20th century, these periodicals were not only of interest, but were also collected in the libraries and museums of the time. Today, collections are stored. Something happened to my slide. Today, collections are stored in many Lithuanian memory institutions. They can be found in bibliographies, in virtual space, on the website of memory institutions. And the Wroblewski Library also has a large collection of periodicals printed in duplicating machines. The collection is stored in the libraries too, area books and manuscript departments. Researchers are aware of this fact. The content of some of the newspapers, mainly stored in REA department, has been discussed in thematic articles, in audio records, and were displayed in exhibitions. The objects themselves have been digitized, and users can read them in the library's digital archive. The situation is different in the manuscript department. Documents are less known and the collection has not yet been discussed. Only researchers with special interest have been aware of these publications. Therefore, the aim of this report is to present the initial results of the research from the point of view of publishing history. The first task will be to reveal the collection's history, methods, and sources of the acquisition. The second, to compile a database of publications. And the third, to analyze what these periodicals, publishers, communicate us about the processes of non-print publishing at that time. The sources of the research were the documents of the history of the library's collections, the periodicals themselves, and their provenances. A division review of all the objects and their provenances revealed the path of the documents and sources of the acquisition. So, non-print periodicals were taken from the earlier collections of Wroblewski Library, transferred to the library with collections from abolished library of Lithuanian army, from collections of Vilnius Belarusian Museum, and from Kaunas University Library and Šiauliai Aušra Museum. And also there were following donations from individuals. So now, identified newspapers are currently stored in 5 archival collections. It should be noted that the department also holds a number of not sorted out funds, which may also be hiding a number of other items at the moment. About the collection in manuscript department. So, 162 newspaper titles are currently recorded. Of these, only 6 titles are identical, only 1 set overlaps, and the other 5 titles are complementary to the sets in the old printing sector. The number of titles per archival item can vary from 1 to 15. The earliest publication was published in 1884 in Petersburg, and the oldest Lithuanian is from Kaunas from 1984 in Polish language, and the latest is approximately 1946, published, we don't know where, but it's an underground publication. In terms of publishing history, the collected newspapers can be divided in 3 chronological periods. The first, last years of Russian Empire, second one, the period of Republic of Lithuania, and third, the occupation and the World War II. The newspapers were published in Lithuanian cities, towns, suburbs, and foreign cities. Geographically, the accumulated entirety can also be divided into several main regions by acquisition or collecting tradition. So there are newspapers published in Vilnius and Vilnius region, in Kaunas and Kaunas region, periodicals from northern Lithuania and Samogitia, place of military deployment, individual locations in neighboring countries, and emigration sites. And what was interesting and good for us, newspapers also mentioned non-typical or humoristical places as classroom, lost bench, a war field, or old oak. The language analysis also provides an indication of the nationality of the press. Currently, 6 languages has been identified, and we can compare it with the rare book collection. It should be noted that Belarusian and Polish language newspapers belong to organizations active in Lithuania and Belarus, and to Belarusian immigrants in France. In English ones, to immigrants who left Lithuania, and the Ukrainian ones, and it was a surprise for us, to the Carpathian Ukraine, then an autonomous region of the Second Czechoslovak Republic. And if we combine the linguistic distribution with chronological and geographical one, we would notice that even before 1918, Lithuania maintained the multilingual tradition of Grand Duchy Lithuania, and Polish-language newspapers were published not only in Vilnius, but in Kaunas and Šiauliai also. Audience. The largest number of newspapers was dedicated to traditional audience, youth organizations, soldiers, scouts, but publishers also take care of non-traditional, at that time, unusual groups of readers, such as passengers on the boat, wedding guests, builders, or even vegetarians. According to their genres, newspapers can be divided into humor, culture, literary, local history, political, professional, and informational. In terms of frequency of publication, we can divide them into periodicals and not periodicals or occasional. Example, headlines declare that the weekly newspaper will appear twice a month or monthly, or published weekly on following days, or occasionally. The publishers did not like humor. Goes when the heat is on, or it will go if it feels up to its. Method of publishing. Most of the newspapers are handwritten and illustrated, while others are typewritten. They are reproduced on duplicating machines, shapirograph and hectograph. A few more are handwritten without any reproduction technique. Very few printers are mentioned, but nothing is said about the means of reproduction on the spot at the publisher's quarters. But some records suggest that the army or its units had reproduction equipment locally. And the humor again. There was a Pizrut put printing house in Šiauliai, printed on the bottom of bottle, or Gaidys printing house and similar. What they called their publications. Subtitles usually refer to publications in the diminutive noun form of the word newspaper, laikraštėlis. This form seems to indicate an understanding that it is not a large circulation, highly periodical publication aimed at a very wide audience. Only individual publications intended for professional audience, officials, are called as normal newspaper. Only 3 publications are presented as magazines, and a few more namings in written works. Publication, organ, and a couple times of manuscript in diminutive form, rankraštėlis. Even so, the object is multiplied. The purpose was described by Jonas Jablonskis in the article Moksleivių laikraštėliai, which was published in 1921. It said that the purpose were to provide additional information for learning, to enable the practical application of knowledge, and to demonstrate the knowledge acquired. The author gives an overview of newspapers, types, and identifies 3 as the most important: jokes and cartoons, general education, and science. So, maybe this article became the first review of non-printing periodicals. At the same time, this text draws attention to the publishers of the newspaper, the fact that several newspapers can be published in one school, and who is in charge of publishing them. So who are these publishers? They are usually named in the subtitle of the newspaper, indicating those publications whose publication it is. Only one reference to the publishing house has been found, and only in the 1940, the publishing house Polonia į Lithuania. However, almost every publication mentions the person or team responsible for publishing the issue. Sometimes only a formal name is given. If a larger set of publications has arrived, it is possible to observe the change of constancy of the editor in charge, and if several sets of newspapers from the period are collected in one city, it is possible to observe that, for example, a single person can edit several newspapers at the time. In slide, you can see activities of two editors, Albinas Briedis and Kostas Korsakas. In the last page of the newspaper, the communication with authors and readers also reveals the behind-the-scenes work of the editorial committee or the editor. As example, information and announcements about content publication, that manuscripts are not returned to their authors, and usually a brief reply to the authors as to why their material is not being published. The presentation of content also shows an understanding of the issue of copyright. Texts are occasionally signed with a real name, but most often with a pseudonym. In almost all cases, the authors of the illustration are acknowledged, with special attention being paid to the designers of the covers. Newspapers also tell us about the issue of content creation and ways for mobilizing authors. They encourage readers to themselves to write, invites authors from neighboring districts, or explains why a newspaper rarely appears. About pricing. Often the newspaper had a separate price per issue and sometimes the subscription price for the year. Another pricing option for members of the organization and not for members, or one more strategy in Army, one copy of the issue will be given to each unit, coup, team, hospital, formation, or office free of charge. About distribution. The newspapers could be read at the place where the publishers themselves were located, edited by me, disseminated by you, or starting from Galorka from the end of the row in the class, or is available in the office. However, this way was not sufficient to achieve greater dissemination and outreach, so publishers looked for new ways. They announced a competition for the distribution of the press, or encouraged participation in the distribution, or encouraged to read the related newspapers as well. All the publications have a similar structure: table of content, editor's foreword, text, and illustrations. At the end, there are usually puzzles, cartoons, anecdotes, sometimes advertisements. One could also talk about very similar physical characteristics of the newspaper using what were apparently standard notebooks or stapled single sheets at the time. A separate topic may be the layout and size of the newspapers, from double-page spreads to 103-page vegetarian edition. And conclusions. Initial study had answered only a few questions, but it raised many more, thus pointing the way for further research. There is another multilingual, multinational collection of non-print periodicals in the Wroblewski Library Manuscript Department. Already the first results of the research reveal how the publication of these newspapers reflects the changing society and its aspirations. From 1920s onwards, we can speak about regional press phenomenon covering the whole country, involving various social groups in the publication process. Publishers of non-printed periodicals followed the example of printed ones. Filling in gaps of information missing for the presumed readers. Thus, newspapers had all the necessary publication metrics, and publishers had to be inventive in their pricing and distribution strategies in order to sustain the publishing process. For a long time, non-print periodicals have been seen as an insignificant genre. However, the concentrated database of newspapers is providing new information for research into a reading of Lithuanian youth, soldiers, into creativity and things that inspire it, and is revealing areas of interest from different social groups. Also, it is becoming a relevant field for research on language, art history, reuse of works, etc. So we wish the researchers strength and endurance. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Rima, for your presentation. And have any questions from the audience to our speaker? Not yet. So thank you again for new findings in Lithuanian non-print periodicals. And we invite our Arvydas Pacevičius, please. Have you a question?
Thank you. Thank you, Rima, for interesting presentation. My question is about oldest, how to say, periodicals, because I think that you have also, how to say, handwritten periodicals from the beginning of 19th century, or maybe also from 18th century, because, you know, silver arrow and so on, sometimes they used just to make something interesting. Yes, very creative people. Yes, in our Grand Duchy of Lithuania. What do you think? Because, you know, there was project about ego documents, maybe also in the context of ego documents, we can something, yes, to think about, yes, periodicals. You know, list correspondence also is like periodically, yes, made product. Yes, thank you very much.
So thank you, Arvydas, for question. Yes, I know that we have some periodicals in manuscript books, in collection of documents, and especially from Eglė Wroblewski library. But they are not collected to one place. They are inside of another codexes. So we must check and to make a list of such documents. But as you see from my presentation, from a text from my colleagues, Aida Grybienė, who are working with all this old periodical, we are going step by step to deep to found all these periodicals and to digitize. If the part of old periodical section is collected, described, managed in information system and digitized, so the next step now is the non-printed periodicals in manuscript department. So the one more next step will be this oldest part, because at the moment is the hardest work. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation and for brief discussion. And now we'll continue with our presentation from Finland. And I invite Tuula Pääkkönen. She is Master of Science. Hello, Tuula. And she is Information System Specialist in National Library of Finland. Her work includes development of a presentation system of digitized newspapers in various duties. So the floor is yours.
Yes, hopefully you can hear me, I think.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, are you sharing? Maybe I share
Okay.
the slides from I think
Okay.
you should be able to see my slides. Yes, thank you for giving me this opportunity to tell about this digitization that we have. So currently 20 years strong and going forwards, let's say. And congratulations for your 200-year celebration of periodicals. So that's lots of time that has passed. Yeah, so I was thinking that I will tell a little bit about National Library of Finland and our kind of goals in Finland. So we are the Finland's largest and oldest research library, and our core duty is accumulation, description, preservation, and availability of the national published heritage. So this is something that is kind of, for example, periodicals, newspapers, books, this kind of generally available material, let's say. And naturally, nowadays, things has gone onwards so that we also provide quite many information systems for and software for the library sector. And then we also have collaborations with museums, galleries, and archives in Finland. So it is quite a network of organization that we have. And naturally, the collections are available for everyone to see. And we have about 260 employees at this moment. And naturally, during our long history, there has been lots of involvement in the library. So our origin are from the 1640, when we were kind of the Royal Academy of Turku, and this was during the Swedish reign. And then after the Turku fire that you might have heard of, so the library moved to Helsinki, and then it was kind of part of this Imperial Alexander University. And then from the beginning of 19th century, we have been kind of the library of the University of Helsinki until 2006. And then as a kind of independent institute, the National Library with this name was kind of formulated 2006. So in that sense, quite a young place, but in a way also very old place. Yes, okay. Then we have lots of different kind of collections. Naturally, the core is the national collection, which contains the publications and so forth. But we are also kind of important research library for humanities. So there's history, material, literary studies, philosophy, art history, music study, Russian and Eastern European studies. So these are kind of our focus areas for which our collections are accumulated the most. Then there are basically over 6 million items consisting all of these. So there are also sound recordings, ephemera, which are these kind of brochures, ads of current years, for example. Then maps, sheet music, posters, manuscripts. And in total, there are about 100 kilometers of bookshelves located here. Okay, but then to the digitization. So yeah, so currently we digitize about 2 to 3 million pages annually. So naturally it varies a bit depending on what kind of material is done and which scanners are available and so forth. And I think that earlier Liisa was also linking this digitization program. So that is something that gives a kind of our short-term plan of what is going to be digitized in next years, let's say. And we are actually currently planning of doing the next period's digitization program. Yeah, but if you remember that we have 100 kilometers self-kilometers material, so one of the important thing here is the selection of material, what is being digitized. And usually the whole digital this kind of workflow is kind of, we describe it as this kind of digital chain to kind of illustrate that there are actually very many steps within the digitization that needs to be taken care of at some point of time. And the selection of material is actually quite important step there. So we have to think about what is digitized and when and what's kind of the correct point of time to do that. And when that has been done, so we go to this physical pickup. So someone picks up the item or workbook from the shelf, and then the metadata is checked or enriched. So for example, for every digitization, we have a kind of system that you have to have the record of the item existing. Naturally, because that gives a handle for the object. So that's important part there. So then the logistics occurs, so the materials are sent for us to Mikkeli site to digitize, and here we do the preparation. So if there's needed some taking off the metal clips or straightening out the pages or something like that. And in some cases there's also this conservation needed, so that some holes are fixed and ensuring that the material kind of can survive the digitization process. And naturally then there's the scanning, so picking up the correct scanner for the digitization based on the material that is being done. And then kind of in the digital world, the fun starts at post-processing. So we have several servers kind of doing this text recognition, for example, for the pages, and this enables having the search for the contents directly and so forth. And then after the post-processing, we go to deployment. So the material goes to our presentation systems for anyone to see, or based on the agreements made to be available. For example, copyright-free material is available for anyone in the world, let's say, so they can utilize our web system as they want. And then also the physical material goes back to Helsinki site for storage, and also the digital version also goes to this long-term preservation effort. So the idea is that also the digital version survives like 500 years ahead, and this is also ensured. But I will tell about that a bit more later. And then the cycle kind of continues onwards for the other materials. Yeah, so there's lots of logistics ongoing here. So I don't know if you visit us at any point, you might notice these kind of cages of material where there are bound volumes of newspaper bindings, for example. So this is something that our newspaper operators are doing. So then sometimes there's this unbinding of bound volumes depending on which scanner is used. Sometimes even page cutting is possible if there's kind of multiple copies. So that can also be kind of easing the digitization effort with certain scanners. And the scanner choices depending on which scanners are available and so forth. And then binding these again when they are going back to the returning and storage place. So this is kind of this cycle that occurs here. Yeah, I shortly mentioned about the post-processing. So this is something that the machines in our machine room are kind of doing. So background servers are running all the time and doing this kind of layout analysis. So for example, for each page, the analysis is done that which parts are text paragraphs, which columns there are, if there's any illustrations. So doing this kind of digital representation of the page itself. And then there's the text recognition part. So several languages, naturally, those Finnish, Swedish, whatever our collections might have. So the text recognition is done for those. And then finally, the material goes to the diginationallibrary.fi, the presentation system, where it lies kind of the both metadata and the text contents to be used. And here's actually kind of a short of small link or image of our presentation system. So far that we have about 5,000 titles, where there are about a bit over 1,000 newspapers, and then about 4,000 journals. So journals are something that there are quite many of those titles, but there can be sometimes that there's only one number per year, for example. So anyway, the page numbers are much higher in the newspaper side. And currently, we just a couple of weeks ago, or was it last week, I think we went over the 27 million mark. So that is the number of pages that we have when we count everything that we have digitized onwards. So that's quite good. Okay, so because I was thinking that it's good to look back also. So we have 20 years of digitization experiments, and there are sediments, let's say, they're existing. And it is kind of interesting to remember that the Center of Digitization was founded only at 1990, or actually early. So it depends how do you think about it. It's quite recent thing anyway. And actually some user was kind of asking that when was the presentation system kind of created or first launched, and it was actually at the Helsinki Book Fair on October 2001. So we are like now like 22-year-old web service, let's say, which is kind of interesting to remember always. And at that point, it was one of the first online systems for digitized material. So this was something new at that point of time. So I think that the colleagues used to tell me that the Library of Congress naturally and Australia's Trove services kind of were the services that preceded us. But there might be some others. So if you know any other that has this kind of long history, so send me a note. And it was kind of also interesting that actually you start from the zero. So we started from 100,000 newspaper pages. So this was the very early phases when the whole digitization was kind of started up, and the whole process was kind of think about that how this thing is done. So how things are digitized and so forth. So whole process and such was kind of had to be considered there. And there naturally has been this continuous development over the years. So we have had these kind of jumps in both materials and the web system, so that how things are kind of improved and developed onwards. So for example, 2006 we got ephemera material journals, and after that there has been crowdsourcing, book material, and so forth. So just kind of increasing little bit by little bit, different kind of materials and the web system as its own also. Yeah, and actually one thing that has been kind of supported the development of the digitization has been these standards that has existed for quite a while. So for example, MET standard is probably quite known for everyone here. So that is the metadata encoding and transmission standard. So that kind of describes the binding in kind of this, let's say, machine readable format. So it tells about the origins of the origin of the binding metadata, what has been done in the digitization and so forth. So there's kind of this full audit log there. Then there's this Aalto files, so that is technical metadata for layout and text objects, and that tells then again for the whole page, so all the important parts for that is there. So for example, page text in which coordinates a certain word is found and so forth. And then naturally for the metadata side, so we have had this Mark 21 for the books, for example, and then in some way new format is this EAD3, that is for the archive collection metadata, and one specialty there is the archive hierarchy that is important to know, because that is kind of important part of the archival data, let's say. And actually one interesting thing is that we have had lots of these digitization configuration phases in our digitization. So for example, the processing of these images and metadata has changed, and in a recent project we actually found these kind of old images where, for example, the tape measure is actually across the image, and it is kind of something that was experimented at some point of time to kind of store also this measurement information, so that this page is actually 54 centimeters or something like that. And these were actually found now when we developed a new project, so that okay, we have these. So typically these are not kind of offered to the end users, but why in this our Finlandia project, where in a way a full inventory of our materials were made, so that we remember that we had these in the storage. So, but it's always been interesting to find these. Yeah, and then one also important thing is that if you remember that we have 27 million pages, so one important part here is the quality control. So that is something that we try to focus on quite much, so that it is kind of part of the job by everybody. So the scanner operators can and have the opportunity to check that if there's something something going on with the scanner, so then recalibrate it or fix the scanners accordingly. Then also the post-processing operators, because they check, for example, that the metadata is correct, so they can see the page image and verify that those match. And naturally in the IT side, so that we also do this kind of background checks in the systems, that everything is running smoothly and so forth. And checking that all the titles and numbers have arrived, so that we can truly say that we have digitized all published newspapers in Finland, and there's only some numbers or maybe titles missing, but it is actually digitized fully. Yeah, and also this kind of if there's any issues, so we try to list these digitization anomalies, and if needed, so then the work is done again, and so that we have a kind of best quality that we can offer for the end users, so that they can kind of trust our materials and the digitization process itself. Yes, and okay, here's the kind of the end result of all of this work. So if you remember that we started from 100,000 pages, so and nowadays this year we went over the 27 million page number. So it has been quite constant. So naturally, because we have kind of fine-tuned the process, so the digitization amount has kind of also increased and so forth. So, but anyway, quite good increase in the digitization side. Okay, I was thinking that I will also shortly mention about the development and digitization projects. I think my colleagues were already mentioning this earlier presentation, but a short bit also on this presentation. So we have had lots of these development projects in different years to kind of to focus the improvement efforts, but also to have this kind of collaboration or discussion with other organizations or researchers, so hear about their impact, their work, and so forth. So for example, this crowdsourcing is something that we have had some history with it. So for example, the old card index of 1890 is nowadays a feature in presentation system. I think I had the slide about that also later on, and this feature is currently kind of, let's say, implemented in this kind of research project Translocalis, where the local letters of newspapers were kind of released as its own database. So those local letters are something that this kind of general public could send to the newspapers. They could complain about the market situation or youngsters who are kind of having a lewd life or something like that. So this kind of social media of the time were the local letters, so they are quite interesting topic. And then there has been this digital humanism project, so open data improvements in Digitalia, name entity recognition, and this kind of going deeper in the page context. And then also now the Finlaria project, where our aim is to get the data more conveniently used for the researchers. Okay, this was actually, I was also wanting to mention this card index case because there's a Baltic connection here. So on 1890s, there was this kind of target to create this kind of index of articles of newspapers, because naturally at that point there were no information systems, but there was desire to have a search to the newspapers, and they created this kind of card index thing. And interesting is that this idea to this card index came from the Baltics. So this Edward Winkelmann created this kind of material for that area. So that kind of idea flown to the Finland then. And this card index history is also quite long. So it was actually handwritten originally, but then at some point it was scanned and typed, kind of cleanly typed, so it was kind of recreated in a way, and it nowadays exists within a feature within Digi. And then from that feature, the researchers created this kind of their own database for the local letters. So this was something that kind of this side project of ours was then a core project for this researcher. So everything can be useful for somebody, let's say, in that sense. And then also we have had these clippings things. So I think Liisa and Erno were mentioning already earlier. So the clipping is something that in physical paper you can take the scissors and take a notice of some interesting part, and we have a digitized version of that. So you can create your own data set based on these clippings and mark the areas that are interesting and so forth. And nowadays there's also possibilities to do this kind of text analysis for the clipping part and so forth. And this has been surprisingly useful or popular with the end users. And then we have nowadays this Finland project where we enable the getting the data of the digitized materials to the CSC, which is the kind of the Finland's IT Center for Science. And there's this kind of high computing environment where the researchers can get the material kind of straight away to their work area and run whatever tools they seem fit for the material, so forth. Yeah, and currently there's copyright-free material goes there, but we will see how it evolves then in the future. Okay, so summary. I think that the core base for digitization is our digitization program that naturally is based on the strategy and the stakeholder discussions for whoever needs something, or if there's something that we have to preserve especially, so then it's kind of important to have it offered. And actually one thing that this is always good to mention is that this digitization is a cross-organizational effort. So starting from the metadata side, then the digitization and use. So I think that in some way everyone in the library is kind of also involved in this digitization projects and so forth. So there's lots of use for that. And actually, I think that it has not been mentioned today yet, but I think this artificial intelligence will be interesting part also this digitization effort. So we use it a bit in the layout analysis side in the background, but then also this metadata automatic indexing, like in Finto AI, might be interesting in the future. So what it brings and so on. So having this kind of new development also in that side. But I think that was my part. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Tuula, for your engaged presentation. And now there are questions from the audience. Rima, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much for very interesting presentation. You know, your practices is a long time a good example for us. So, and now it was very interesting to hear some special steps of your process. And I would like to ask, you mentioned text recognition after digitization, yes? And do you have a custom-made app for it? Or how do you recognize old press scripts? Because in normal programs, there are only English language. So how you make possible it?
Yeah, there are special this kind of text recognition software. So FineReader, for example, Tesseract nowadays, and then also if you have heard about Transcribus, that is one of the alternatives. So all of these have this kind of fonts for this old Fraktur, for example. So getting that, so it works better than it has earlier. So it's kind of the time is also has been kind of helpful because the Fraktur of the old days is is kind of worse than the current one. So then actually the software has also evolved here. And recently we also did actually one step that we re-OCR'd all the old Fraktur ones with the new software, just to get the level improved a bit.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question and for answer. So, have more questions? We are almost at the end of the session, so please discuss, talk. No questions at all. Arvydas.
No, I haven't questioned, but I'm waiting for discussion.
But you can ask, please. Would you like to ask something? No. So our session is over, and I thank all the speakers and all the panelists of this session. And here today we have 5 extremely interesting, inspired presentations and very interesting insights in historical context and in technological issues was drawn also. So now we have lunch break. And after lunch break, I kindly invite you, all of you, join to the other sessions 3 and 4. And after that, please join to the closing discussion and use the link of 1 and 3 sessions. So if you would like to have to participate in section 3 or section 1 or in the closing discussion, you have to switch from this session and join to another. So thank you again and have a nice time.
Thank you.
Thank you all. It was very interesting to hear all reports. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.